Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and these are my weekly wonderings and wanderings. Today, as I am starting this weekly vlog, it's Saturday, January 31st, the last day of January, which for me has been a simply wonderful month of reading, not the least because this past week I have been home all day, every day, pretty much for the most part, from work because of the snowy, icy conditions outside. This coming week promises to be very different, but we'll survive somehow. Somehow we'll make through having to actually work a full week. I mean, I don't know how people do it, but you know. Anyway, probably won't get as much reading done, but I'm looking forward to the beginning of Febregency and Once Upon a February, as well as picking up my funny book for the Reading the Classics Challenge, which is the February prompt. As far as today goes, I am wrapping up Epistolary January with my final epistolary read, which also finishes up a series for me. That's the Skymar series, and the book that I am reading is Loyally Luke. And I'm already really enjoying it. Seems like it'll be a pretty quick read depending on how much time I have to devote to it. So, planning to wrap that up pretty quickly before I launch myself into all of my February reading. I also am still working on A Tale of Two Cities. It'll take me another week or two probably to finish that at the pace I'm reading it. And I also am finishing up this week The Hour That Changes the World, which I'm buddy reading with Kelly, and that is about prayer. So yeah, so I've got a nonfiction and a classic in progress and working on a fun epistolary rom-com at the moment. I have no idea what I'll pick up next, but I probably will want to get started right away on The Innocents Abroad by Mark Twain for my classics reading challenge, so I can start on that and have a good chance of finishing it during the course of the month, because it does look a little bit longer than I was anticipating, and I'm not sure how quick of a read it is. I'll find out. I really don't know much about it. So that is my plan and my week. Don't have a lot going on. Our dryer is coming on Monday, hopefully, Lord willing. So I will actually probably be getting a lot of laundry done throughout the course of the week that has been building up. So yeah, we are going to lighten up this work heavy week with hopefully some good reading. Let's see. Later the same day, I'm so excited. I'm finally working on building back up the inventory of my Etsy shop with the blind dates. And I just wrapped this one and I love it. I just love the green and the gold and how this sticker just works perfectly with that. This is a fairy tale retelling, so, and there's only one of them on my shop. So anyway, I just wanted to show you though, because it's so beautiful. I love it. I gotta do quite a few more to get my stock back up, but putting this one on there soon. Well, hello there. It is Monday. It is Groundhog Day. Punxsutawney Phil said, he's the groundhog, he said that we have 6 more weeks of winter, and we're all like, duh. Also, I have 1 more snow day. I cannot believe it. Yesterday, I was shocked when I got the notification that yet again, we do not have school. Crazy. The reasons why apply to school buses primarily, and sidewalks being accessible or not. It doesn't really apply to us as a private school, but because we follow the county regulations as required by our lease, I don't have school today. It's the teacher life, I guess. So this morning I've been pretty lazy, catching up on my reading journal and stuff like that. And it's been nice to have a slower morning, to take more time in prayer and things like that. So it's been really nice. So yeah, my morning was pretty slow, but I do have some errands to run, and I'm feeling confident enough that I can go driving and getting those errands done this afternoon. So right now though, I'm just going to film this quick update. So I have finished with my January reading. So I just wanted to share a quick recap of that and how everything went. I'll show you my journal. So this is my book tracker, and you can see all of the books that I've read in January, all the blue books. 13 books in January, which is amazing. It's been a long time since I've had such a productive reading month, and of course it was helped by the fact that I had a solid week last week at home with nothing really to do and nowhere to go, and that was wonderful. Made a big difference. Of those 13 books, 6 of them were from my shelf, which is not ideal. It's less than half, so I do need to bump that up in February. I did add 2 nonfiction reads, The 12 Ways of Christmas by David Jeremiah, which was a devotional, and The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. So both of those Christian nonfiction. And of course, January was Epistolary January, and we had our live discussion on Saturday, which went very well. Thank you so much to everybody who came and joined in the conversation. And this is my journal spread. I read a total of 8 books for Epistolary January, which was pretty good. I covered all the prompts, most of them multiple times. So I won't go into all the details of each book and what prompt it fit or whatever, but I will just say that I did all of them and had a marvelous time. Some really good books that I read. And then this is my January spread. This is just the pictures of the covers and my brief bullet journal style thoughts on each of them. And I had to add a page with a couple of extra books and my little snowman. I had 0 DNFs, so that's always nice. Of the books I read in January, rating them was really hard. There were some that definitely had strong 5-star vibes. Some of them I actually did give 5 stars. Some of them were 4 stars, really, really, really close to 5 stars. Some of them were 3 stars. That seems like not high enough because I really did enjoy them, but there were also things about them I really did not enjoy. So it was a mixed bag, but by and large, I thoroughly enjoyed all of my reading in January in different ways and for different reasons. And there were very different styles of books. There was nonfiction, like I said. There were 3 classics. There were several that were straight epistolary, and then there were some that were, kind of a mixed epistolary style. Some of them, like there were a couple really long ones, like The Historian, but then there were much shorter ones, like Yours from the Tower wasn't a very long read. So historical fiction, all kinds of interesting things that I read. Overall, really enjoyed my reading in January. It was a lot and it was good reading. So as for the challenges, I read The Practice of the Presence of God for Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. The prompt was, the title includes an article. For the Christian Fiction Bingo by Jane Reads, I read 1 book for both of the prompts for January, which was Dual Timeline and Hidden Gem. And I read The Fabric of Hope, An Irish Family Legacy by Susan G. Mathis, which is a dual timeline. And it has fewer than 1,000 ratings on Goodreads. I don't know how many it has, but it's significantly fewer than 1,000. It's not a well-known book. It's a local to me author. And I enjoyed that one. And then I have, for Alma's Journey Through Time Historical Fiction Challenge, I read Greek Myths by Olivia Coolidge, which was exactly what it sounds like. It was the stories of the Greek myths. Then for my Reading the Classics Challenge, I read Flowers for Algernon, which is by an American author, Daniel Keyes. It was written in the early 70s, I want to say. So it just squeaks in there as a classic by the parameters for this event. And it was a 5-star prediction, and I did indeed give it 5 stars. So it was also epistolary because it was written in a journal format, and that was perfect. So that was my reading in January. After the month had already started, decided to jump in on the Brighter Winter Reading Challenge, and I did really well in January. The idea was to get 7 of the challenges, and I managed to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's pretty good. I did double up some of the prompts, which you could do, and not all of the books fit in it. I wasn't really trying to, like, I was just retrofitting what I was reading into it if it worked, which was fun. I'm not sure that I will be successful for February because as I'm looking at the different prompts, I don't know that anything will fit. And in my newly minted series spread, I did finish 2 actually in January. So I checked off Loyally Luke, and that finishes the Skymar series by Febregency. And then I read Ruthless Vows, which finishes off the Letters of Enchantment series by Rebecca Ross. And both of those were epistolary. So now I am looking forward to my February reading. I already read Loyally Luke, which was finishing up, again, the epistolary January, but I finished it, the actual book, yesterday on February 1st. And I think I gave it 3 stars, 3.5 stars. It was very good. I enjoyed it. I liked the characters. I liked Luke and Ellie, who are the 2 main characters. Really enjoyed their personalities and their stories and their interactions. However, what I didn't like, there was this constant back and forth, will they, won't they kind of feel to the story, and it just got a little bit tiresome and repetitive. They kept saying, there's no future for us, so we're going to avoid each other. And then, the next thing you know, they're kissing each other. So that part was a little bit, like, it was just a frustrating reading experience. It just happened, like, once maybe would it be fine, but it just kept happening like that. And so, in the end, they're finally going to get together, right? It's just all of this back and forth and making dumb choices kind of thing. Certainly very realistic, very true to human nature, honestly. It just wasn't super enjoyable to read about. That was the only thing I didn't really like about it. Probably not my favorite in this series, but still overall enjoyable, and I loved the epistolary format of it. So that was my start to my February reading, sort of. I'm going to be picking up The Innocents Abroad by Mark Twain and getting that started for my Reading the Classics challenge. And I'm also going to be reading this shouldn't take long, To Love a Beast by Karen Whittemire. And this knocks off a lot of stuff for February, not the least of which is the Read Your Bookshelf challenge, which, as I discussed at length in my February TBR, you need to have 3 objects on the cover. And so we all determined that this one fits. So I'm reading that. It also goes with the Once Upon a February challenge, because it is a fairy tale retelling. So those are the 2 priorities that I'm going to get started with this week. I also already have in progress A Tale of Two Cities still, and The Hour That Changes the World that I'm buddy reading with Kelly, which is about prayer. So working through both of those a little bit at a time, and we'll probably finish both of those at some point next week. So at some point in February. So that is what I've got going this week, and I am going to go run some errands and be productive today, and we'll see if I get any reading done or not on this extra snow day. So I'll check in with you again later this week. Well, it's been a minute. This might be one of the lamest weekly vlogs I've had in a while. Because basically all I'm doing is work. Work. We've had full days this week, which is good, getting back to normal routine. So I do 8th grade music first semester, 7th grade second semester. So we did have a switch this week. So brand new group of students. I started a music elective with high school students, which actually ended up being 9th graders. And so I started that, and that is 4 days a week. And that is a brand new class that I have not taught before. So that's been a lot of work, like getting that together, and anyway, getting it to a place where it will, like just keep going, but starting it is like a lot of extra work. And then it's also a point in my work that I do for my church, coordinating music, where there's just a lot of like, it's the turn of the month. So like, anyway, just a lot of stuff. Plus Easter's coming up. Plus we have a couple other special events I have to plan for anyway. So I have been basically working all the time and doing a little bit of reading, not much. Continuing to read The Hour That Changes the World with Kelly. And I'll share more thoughts on it when I actually finish that one. For now, just continuing to read it. And still reading A Tale of Two Cities. I am more than 2/3 of the way through. There are 3 books, I think, or volumes, and I finished the second one, but there's only like 100 some pages left, like 140 pages left, which is less than 1/3 of the book. So I am moving on apace with that one and enjoying it very much. I just started The Innocents Abroad, but I haven't had time to read any more than the first chapter. So it's just kind of setting up what's happening in that, and I haven't gotten any further than that. I did finish a book. I finished To Love a Beast, which actually, if I wanted to, could knock out a whole bunch of stuff on my February TBR. But primarily, I read it for Once Upon a Faebruary because it is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. And I also have it for Chantel's Reach Your Bookshelf Challenge because there are more than 3 objects on the cover. So it fit for those things. It could go for some other stuff if I wanted it to, but for now we're starting with that. See what else I get read in February. I enjoyed it overall. For those of you who didn't like particularly the first book in this series, I know that some people felt like there was too much of the physical attraction aspect of things. This one is not like that at all. This one is very, very sweet. For me, it was, I feel like where I'm putting this comment now might come across wrong based on what I literally just said. It's not that I want it to be steamy. I don't. I prefer it to be pretty clean. But I think it's our main character. So it's Beauty and the Beast. It's very much patterned off the Disney version of Beauty and the Beast. There are lots of nods to that movie version. So if you love that movie, then you will enjoy this. But this main character, her name is Callista, but she's definitely patterned off of Belle in that movie. And she's very sweet all the time, like unerringly sweet and good and wholesome. And that's the part that was a little too much for me, too much sweet. I would have liked her to have, I don't know, something a little bit more. I don't know. Anyway, but it was a very good story. It was a very unique premise, one that I've never particularly encountered in a book before, I don't think. So I thought it was a very creative how Karen Wittemeyer came up with that whole backstory that you read in the prologue. But I will leave you to discover it for yourself. Anyway, that was an interesting premise and created for an interesting story and set up all of the problems and conflicts that our characters have to work through as we go through the course of the story. So it was good. It wasn't like my favorite book ever, but it was an enjoyable retelling of Beauty and the Beast. But definitely very much on the sweet and wholesome and clean side of things. Not a great deal of depth, just good, clean fun, really. And there was something, there was a book that was mentioned in here. Like, she mentions several books. The main character, the girl in the story, she's a bookbinder. So there are multiple classic books mentioned in this story. I thought it was really neat how Karen Wittemeyer picked books that were contemporary to that time, that it's set in late 19th century Texas. But there was one book I had not heard of that sounded really interesting. Alan Quatermain. I think that's how you say it. Alan Quatermain. It's like an adventure story. And well, I guess the actual title is King Solomon's Mines, maybe, and the main character is Alan Quatermain. And there's like a whole series, and it's like archaeological exploration and adventure. that sounded kind of fun. So the characters talk about that book a little bit. Anyway, so I don't know, I guess probably 3.5, 4 stars. I mean, it was fun for what it is. I enjoyed it. But anyway, that's that. The other thing I read was, well, actually, haven't quite finished reading the chapter. I was supposed to have it read by this past Tuesday for professional development, but I read most of it. Passing the Torch, which we are reading through the course of this year for professional development at my school. This is by Luis Marcos, and we read the chapter, well, we read chapter 6 and 7. I actually had read chapter 6, but verses 7 I was still working on, hadn't quite finished it. But chapter 7 was virtues versus values, and that was, I do want to finish that chapter, but the half of the chapter that I read was an idea for me that was new, in that the term or the idea of values in modern life has replaced virtue. And the problem with that is virtues are constant things that are more objective and consistent. So in particular, we're talking about classic virtues like wisdom and courage. And I forget the other ones that he mentioned, I underlined them. Self-control and justice. But in addition to other virtues that go along with those, like honesty, integrity, diligence, loyalty, hospitality, responsibility, obedience, and gratitude. And then Christian virtues of faith, hope, and love, and the fruits of the Spirit. So those are virtues. They might have different applications and different people might have different viewpoints on the applications thereof, but those virtues are consistent. And he is advocating for having virtue as your goal in your school rather than values, because values are basically like one person's idea of the application of the virtues, I guess. And it can be very subjective, and it can shift with changing culture, and within a culture you will have different pockets of people with different values. And so returning to more essential virtues and working on those and training children up in those is much more effective in developing well-rounded citizens of good character. And that was a good distinction for me that I had never thought of before. I never spent any time thinking about it, but I liked that distinction, and I think that it's going to affect my reading as well. I think that sometimes that's what bothers me about books where they get preachy or dogmatic or emphatic about various values of things that are important to 21st century culture, or at least culturally speaking, generally speaking, but they're not actually about virtue. But books that are focused on actual virtues and true character and moral fiber is much more interesting and meaningful to me personally, and a lot less likely to frustrate me. So I found that distinction to be very helpful, and something that I am going to keep in mind in not only in, as an educator, but as a parent, but also a reader, and being aware of that difference as I read it in books. That is that. And I think that is all that I wanted to mention. Like I said, I don't really have a lot going on this week other than work, so we won't talk anymore about that. I downloaded a book on my Kindle from Hoopla maybe, that I thought I might want to read, but I didn't actually get very far in it. And that was when I was in the car and looking for something easily portable. Oh yeah, another fairy tale retelling that I've had on my Kindle for a while. I think I got it like a Stuff Your Kindle Day or something. It's by Sally Britton, who is one of my favorite Regency romance authors, and it's called The Rumpled Gentleman. So it's a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin. So that sounds like fun. So I will get to that at some point, but right now I actually want to pick up some, since I read To Love a Beast, I want something with a little more depth to it as my next read. So I have quite a few options here at home that I will pick from. And I'm also, I have so many options on my mind like that I could read this month. There's no way I'm gonna get to them all. We'll see what I end up reading. That's it for now. I'll see you next time. Well, it's actually Saturday morning now, and this is when I typically begin a new weekly reading vlog, my weekly wonderings and wanderings, but today I am ending it here, wrapping up this lame-o week of reading. Not that I had terrible reading, I just didn't have a lot of time for much of anything, as I've already said, so we won't go further into that. So let me just wrap this up with a sort of sit rep as far as what I am currently working on, what's in progress, brief thoughts about it as I head into a new week. And if you hear anything strange, it's probably gusts of wind. It is very, very windy today, and occasionally there are gusts of wind that are loud enough to make themselves heard, but also occasionally blow things around. We woke up this morning to see, and I don't know how we didn't hear it over the night, but over the night when the wind started, it actually knocked a tree down. Like, it was a tree that had already been marked by the association where we live as one that needed to be cut down, but they hadn't cut it down yet. And so like the top, like it broke about, I don't know, a third of the way from the bottom, or maybe halfway from the bottom. Anyway, it just broke off right there and fell. Thankfully, it just fell into the wooded area there and didn't damage anything. But, and I also don't know how we missed hearing that. We must have been sleeping very soundly. But anyway, very windy here. Weather has been a hot topic of late in these parts, which is interesting because Virginia doesn't usually get very interesting weather. Anyway, last night, we went to my son's basketball games, which were very disappointing, or basketball game, I should say. It was pretty disappointing for a variety of reasons, but our boys played very well and were very beneficial to the team. So that was good. Then we had pizza for dinner and went and picked up some gelato to enjoy watching the opening ceremonies of the Olympics in Italy. So, you know, what's more Italian than pizza and gelato? I mean, I know, in Italy, it's better, but you know, we had our version of pizza and gelato, and it was delicious and it was wonderful, and we enjoyed watching the opening ceremonies, except for Mariah Carey. I mean, you know, Mariah Carey, whatever, she's fine, but why in Italy? When Italy, like, in Italy, they invented vocal technique, okay? Or discovered it, maybe I should say. Like, they have amazing singers, which we also saw some of them. We saw Andrea Bocelli and Cecilia Bartoli and Laura Pausini. Like, they have their own amazing singers. And Mariah Carey, I mean, she's fine, and she like tossed out her little whistle note there just to make it interesting, but like, I'm still a little perplexed why. And she also didn't seem like she really wanted to be there, honestly. So again, why? And she was singing like a very popular Italian song. Like, why couldn't an Italian sing it? That's what I want to know. Anyway, I thought that was strange. No shade to Mariah Carey, but it seemed out of place, okay? Anyway, that's what we did last night. And then today, I am wrapping this up with an update on my reading. So, I am reading The Innocents Abroad by Mark Twain, and I've made good progress on this week, given that I haven't had much reading time. I read 8 chapters, which is 50-some pages, and it's very interesting. I love to travel, but I'm honestly not much of an armchair traveler. I don't pick up travelogues much, just because, I don't know why, even though I love to travel myself. But this is actually very interesting. And I picked it because it is a funny classic for my Reading the Classics challenge for February, but it's primarily a travelogue. But Mark Twain can't help but throw in his little humorous asides, or his pithy statements, or his ironic, sarcastic commentary on the things that he sees. Like, he can't deliver it without being humorous about it. So that's where the funny comes in, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm finding it interesting to compare and contrast travel at that time, at the end of the 19th century, versus nowadays, and the things that are the same and the things that are different, and how they did things back then in terms of travel and tourism, and also the things that they're seeing. So far, they've been to the Azores Islands and the Rock of Gibraltar, and now they're in Tangier, Morocco. And he just describes these places in a way that you feel like you can see it. And it's not wordy or verbose or, so much description that you get lost in it. And it's interesting description. So it's fun. I will warn you that for 21st century sensibilities, his way of describing culture and people is not politically correct at all. It's not polite at all. He's very blunt, and he says exactly what he thinks about other people and cultures and ways of doing things. So you have to go into understanding that and just expect that that is going to be the case. That sort of approach would not be very popular nowadays, but that is how it is. I really love his little humorous asides. Like he mentioned, so they had a decision to make at one point whether they wanted, like everybody was going to Paris and the exposition in Paris, but they had a choice to go by way of Spain or by way of Africa. I'm not exactly sure how those routes worked, but the main route was by way of Africa somehow, but there was an option to go through Spain. And so everybody had to decide which way they wanted to go. And so some people were just like really indecisive. And, everybody was saying, I don't know. And he says, at the last moment, 6 or 7 had sufficient decision of character to make up their minds to go, and did go. And I felt a sense of relief at once. It was forever too late now, and I could make up my mind at my leisure not to go by way of Spain. I must have a prodigious quantity of mind. It takes me as much as a week sometimes to make it up. So I just love his little extra commentary on the side that gets dished with the, actual storytelling. And then he's not afraid to tell self-deprecating, humorous stories about himself. He tells a little story about, I don't know where he was. Was it in Tangier or Gibraltar? Anyway, one of his fellow travelers had told him, oh, go to this place here and buy kid gloves because they're a really good price. And so he went there, but it was just like an awkward social situation because the clerk there, the woman who was selling him the gloves, gave him a pair that was very much too small for him, which he knew, but he was embarrassed to say anything about it. And so he put one on, but then he had such a hard time taking it off. He ripped it in like 3 places. And all the while she's being the salesperson, and she's just lying through her teeth about how she can always tell someone who is used to wearing kid gloves and just knows perfectly how they should fit and how to put them on and how to take them off. And meanwhile, he's like ripping them to shreds, trying to, manhandle them off of his hand because he's clearly not from the level of society that would wear kid gloves on a regular basis. So anyway, he's was throwing shade at his own self the whole time telling this story. And that was a humorous moment in it. So enjoying that one. And also getting close to the end of Tale of Two Cities. I have about a quarter left of actual reading, like 100 some pages. So I am moving this up in priority and hoping to finish that early next week. I do wonder, and I want to look up, I'm very curious with that one. What was the French response to A Tale of Two Cities when Charles Dickens wrote it? Like, did they read it and what did they think about it? Because he's very blistering in his criticism of the French Revolution on all sides, like every part that played in the French Revolution. And I think it's very, very, I wouldn't disagree with him on anything that he says there actually, but I'm just curious how the French felt about it, having their laundry so publicly aired, so to speak, by an English person, no less. I am finishing this up also with Kelly, The Hour That Changed the World by Dick Eastman. And both of us are getting a lot out of it and really enjoying it. I am, highlighting a lot of things and making a lot of annotations and getting a lot out of it. It's been very encouraging and motivational and purpose giving to my prayer life. So I'm glad I'm reading it. However, I told Clay the other day, and she agreed with me, that every chapter it's like, oh, this, there's some really good stuff here, but I disagree with XYZ. There's always something in each chapter that I'm kind of like, okay, but overall, it's really good. And I'll give more thoughts about that when I completely finish it next week. And in my last video, in my last clip, I should say, I was talking about, what I might pick up next after the book I'd already finished. And I tossed several ideas around. I even downloaded something on Kindle that I still probably will read at some point. But in the end, I went a couple different directions. One, I picked up Charlotte because when I picked up the Kindle one, that was because I was out and about and I didn't have, my library at my disposal. But this is one that I have been wanting to read for a long time. And it also goes with Febregency because this is a finishing of Jane Austen's Sanditon. So I haven't got to the part yet where we're finishing the story. We're still in Jane Austen's portion of Sanditon. So there's that. And then on my Kindle, I picked up Georgette Hare's Regency World or something like that, which I have been wanting to read for a long time, works well with Febregency, and is perfect for February reading. It tells you all about the culture and society in the Regency era, and then gives illustrations of it as depicted in Georgette Hare's books. So, I love Georgette Hare, and so I'm enjoying this perspective on the Regency era. It's an interesting way to give information about something, through the context of a body of literature that's been written about it. So that's fun. I mean, they're not using Georgette Hare as source material. They're using Georgette Hare as illustrations of what was true in Regency era and how Georgette Hare wrote that into her stories. So I'm reading that. And then, like I mentioned, I also downloaded the Rumple Gentleman or whatever by Sally Britton, which is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin. And I will eventually read that, but I have enough on my plate as it is, like 5 books or something going. So yeah, that's enough for right now. So I also did one more thing, and I'm hoping to do more today. I wrapped this book to put on my Etsy shop. This is a World War II historical fiction with lots of bookish references, and I will not tell you anything more about it, but this is going on my Etsy shop, and I am hoping to wrap up some more today so I can build up my stock there because it's kind of low. All right, that has been my relatively lame and boring week, so thanks for sticking around and watching it with me, and that's all I got, guys. That is all I got. Let me know in the comments how your week has gone and what you have been enjoying reading. And if you have any thoughts about what I'm reading, and I will chat with you in the comments. See you next time. Bye.